Good evening. And welcome to everyone who is joining us on the internet. This evening we are beginning, for those in the second edition, on page 31, section 7, Cause and Effect. And for those who are in the first edition, it is on page 27. For those of you who are new, we go around the room and each person reads one paragraph and then passes the microphone on to the next person. Anyone who would prefer not to read, just freely pass the microphone on to the next person.
Thank you, Roger.
You're welcome.
You may still complain about fear, but you nevertheless persist in making yourself fearful.
This is a good point to stop at. I understand that some of you have cast lots to see who in the evening will get to read the most sentences without being interrupted. That leaves you out, Michael. You nevertheless persist in making yourself fearful. I just want to point out that even when you think you're not afraid, you are. If your back is turned toward the altar, if you have said in so many words to the Father, I would rather look at this by myself and determine what it is I am looking at, then you have engaged in what has been called the fall. You have separated yourself from the Father to have a point of view of your own. And the moment that intention is acted upon, and you do engage in having an independent viewpoint, you immediately feel the dissonance of having divided yourself off from the wholeness of yourself. And you get feedback. It's called your capital S sanity. Your sanity says to you, you're in dangerous territory. You're in dangerous territory. Or it says to you, you are choosing to look at things in an unnatural way. It is not wise to act unnaturally. It is not wise to act unnaturally. And this warning, this ever-present awareness that you have stepped out of what is natural to you, and that it therefore constitutes less than sanity, you feel as an undercurrent of uneasiness, and it should feel uneasy to you. If it felt totally comfortable to you, it would mean that you could actually become insane. If you can act at odds with the source of your being and succeed at it and be comfortable with it, it would mean that you had actually severed yourself from your source, which you can't do. So, from that point on, once you are looking at everything from an independent vantage point, there is this undercurrent of uneasiness. And it's a brand new experience. It's not natural. And the uneasy experience, the uneasy energy that you feel, rather than reminding you to return to what is normal to you, can begin to seem to you to be something to overcome. And you can begin to think that existence is a matter of successfully overcoming this feeling which you know isn't natural to you. And so you engage in attacking the feeling. You engage in trying to overcome the feeling, rather than recognizing that it is a signal to go back home, or that it is an ever-present signal that you're not at home, and that it is essential for you to be careful not to be sucked into any distraction from returning home. In other words, that you must be careful not to forget what the undercurrent is calling for and forget to go home. So, everything that follows that act of independence is experienced as fear and a feeling of vulnerability. So, until you all awaken, until you all come home again, please understand that every moment of your existence is imbued with fear. Now, we talked a few weeks ago about the fact that if you go to a foreign country, or you go into an area where the majority of the people there are not of your nationality and you're in the minority, and they all have a different way of looking at things, you find yourself feeling uncomfortable. The reason being that you have no agreed upon definitions with that group of people. And this tells you that when you are feeling comfortable, part of the comfort comes from having established, agreed upon definitions with everybody that you're associating with. And as a result of that, you feel able to relax and not be on the defense. But that isn't because fear is absent. It's because you have found a substitute for fear. Mutually agreed upon definitions that all of you are willing to abide by, and thereby not rock each other's boats, you see. But that's not peace, really, and that's not an experience of the absence of fear. And it's important for you to understand that. So, you may still complain about fear, but you nevertheless persist in making yourself fearful.
That's the distinction between fulfillment and satisfaction you made a while back. The mutually agreed upon definitions, you have satisfaction, and then when you get and turn to the altar and get in touch with one that's awake, that's the fulfillment.
That is correct. Yes.
I have already indicated that you cannot ask me to release you from fear. I know it does not exist.
I know it does not exist.
But you do not. If I intervene between your thoughts and their results, I would be tampering with a basic law of cause and effect, the most fundamental law there is. I would hardly help you if I depreciated the power of your own thinking.
Yes. If someone relieves you of the discovery that your thoughts absolutely govern the way you experience reality, you would become disempowered, and you would not find the occasion for recognizing the authority you exercise over your particular biased experience of reality, the kingdom of heaven. And if you do not find the absolute relationship between your thoughts and your experience, you first of all will feel that you exist without any authority. And that therefore you are like a leaf in the wind, to be blown about hither, thither, and yon by whatever currents there are. And you will become depressed. And you will become even more dysfunctional. And you will become even more afraid. You have to find out the absolute relationship between your thoughts and your experience, the authority you do have. Why? First of all, so that you can feel your power, even though it's an ego power. You must discover your power, so that you can demonstrate to yourself, by a more constructive use of your mind, that you can have a more constructive and harmonious experience. In this way, you learn that you are not subject to chance or fate or the way the wind is blowing, but you are subject only to the thoughts, the ideas, the definitions, the meanings that you are choosing to give everything. Now, when you learn this, and how absolute the relationship is, and that therefore you are never the innocent victim of any circumstance or anyone you know, you have experience that allows you to look at God and say, if God is infinite intelligence, and if the mind of God is the cause of existence, the cause of being for everything that bees, and if then I have now the ability to acknowledge the possibility that the thoughts of God absolutely govern creation. And because God is indivisible and undivided, there can be no conflict in his thought, and therefore there cannot be any conflict in creation. Therefore, since I have been learning that the call is to turn around to the altar and yield to God, I can do it without being afraid that God is a whimsical God, and that I will become subject to whatever whimsical thing he might choose for me that might place me at a disadvantage. I don't have to be afraid that he's a wrathful God. I know from my experience of the absolute connection between my thoughts and my experience, that God, coming from an indivisible and undivided place, is an absolutely secure presence for me to yield into completely. Conversely, if you do not see the absolute connection, the absolute authoritative connection between your thoughts and your experience, and you feel vulnerable to life itself, you will not be able to bring yourself to yield willingly and completely into God, because your God will be to you a reflection of the way you're seeing life. And you will see him as whimsical, even divided within himself, and sometimes angry at you, and sometimes loving of you. And you will not be able to find the courage to yield to God. Now, I've also pointed out before that even though you have chosen to look at things independently, and you have created your own definitions for everything, you cannot stop being the son or daughter of God that you are. You can't stop being what God is being right there where you are. You do have intelligence, and you are able to have thoughts. And your thoughts ultimately do have power and authority. But you won't find out the truth of that power and authority until you've abandoned it by yielding to God and making the connection once again with your source, so that your thoughts might be derived from the Father, and therein have authority, but not an independent authority. Your capacity to think, your capacity to experience ideas, is a divine capacity. But when you are experiencing that divine capacity from a vantage point you have chosen, in which you have decided to relinquish your connection to the Father's point of view so that you might have one of your own, that authority becomes distorted. And because you are, as I said before, automatically in a state of fear when you turn your back to your source, all of your ideas and all of your thoughts will arise out of fear and will always be an act of defense. Now, this is not an indictment on you. It's something that every single one of the sons and daughters of God is capable of. Because you are capable of it, you are not doing something wrong that is punishable. It is like you, humanly speaking, having the capacity to put your hand under the faucet of hot water. It's something that's not practical to do, but the water that's coming out of your faucet normally won't harm you. It will just burn like hell. The point is, so, the fact that you're in a state of fear because you chose to experiment with looking at the kingdom of heaven independent of the Father's point of view, is not something wrong. It's not something you will be punished for, and you're not actually being punished for it right now, but you have chosen for a way of being in the kingdom of heaven that is unnatural, and so it will be uncomfortable. So, don't feel indicted, don't feel bad. Just understand what you're doing so that you can make an intelligent choice to stop doing it.
I want to try to see this in some practical terms, because I think we're all working on, at least I am, I'm learning to notice the movement of God. And I'm learning to yield to this movement when I see where it's going, because I figure it's a lot easier on me to yield to it and go where it's going rather than resist it when it's still going to go where it's going whether I resist or not.
I just want to interject that there is also value in yielding to it whether you can see where it's going or not. That is another aspect
Well, and
to be
that's
included.
ultimately it, because we think we see where it's going, but yielding usually shows us it's going somewhere completely different, because if we saw where it was going, we probably would not even think of resisting it, or think we were able to resist it.
Yes.
But it gets hard to yield it. Sometimes the yielding is very painful.
No, it's the resistance to the flow that's painful.
But I think back to your manifestation, and at the end of the Passion Play, the movement of God is pretty evident in that case. And even through yielding, because they were powerless to do anything else, Mary, your mother, and Mary, your disciple, and John, your disciple, would look up on the cross and see you and feel that you're being torn away from them. And they can trust in the movement of God at that point. But that doesn't change the pain or the tearing. Now, that's an extreme example, but in our lives, there are things we grow comfortable with, and the movement of change sometimes seems very painful.
Yes, indeed.
There's supposed to be a remedy for that now.
Indeed. The reason for the pain is the desire to hold on to the familiar, to hold on to the current form of good that is existing when it is changing. And that is why I said that the discomfort comes from resisting the change. The remedy is to let go of the definition of good that has, let us say, remained in the picture, endured for a long enough time for you to feel comfortable with it and begin to think that there won't be further unfoldment, more change. It's at exactly those moments that the remedy is to turn back to the altar. It's a reminder. Father, what is going on here? my guide, what is the reality that is going on here? How do I behave appropriately to the movement that is occurring that was unanticipated and which I really would rather not have occur? How do I stay in touch with the movement gracefully? And then you listen, and you expect an answer. Why? Because you want to be dead center in the movement of fulfillment that God is being. Why? Because you want to fulfill your function, which is to glorify God. To be the full-blown presence of His will. Right there, in what apparently is nothing more than a human circumstance, at least as far as the ego is concerned. You hold on to what you're familiar with because you feel that its loss will constitute a loss, rather than a gain. Oh, but I like it down here in the valley. No, we're going to go up to the mountaintop. But it's moist and it's verdant and it's and there is a river and it is enjoyable and it's going to be hard work to climb to the top of the mountain. It will be worth it. I don't know. Please, can we do it tomorrow? But when you yield and you say yes, and you go to the top of the mountain, you find that the view is more expansive. You find that you have more than you had because the valley is still available to you, but more has been added to it. You are afraid of loss, and yet the gain of more than you already have will require you to let go of the little you have, to let go of your tight clutch on it that is so tight that nothing else can be embraced. You have to be willing to let it go so that more can be added to it.
Amen.
Question.
Go ahead.
A while back you made a distinction, and I think I'm seeing it now as you, when I'm thinking alone, that's cause and effect. And 3 weeks ago you said that effect would be it could make my blood pressure rise, but I couldn't manifest a gun or a knife, which would be creation. A few years ago you used the phrase cause and event, and that's the Father's thoughts, that the cause and event.
The movement of God is the cause and the event.
And my thoughts isolated just make me uptight and fearful and squirmy.
Yes.
No creation.
And then you have a caricature of cause and a caricature of event that is called effect.
Yeah. Less than a decade, that became clear to me. Thank you.
You are welcome. That is an improvement for you.
Yes.